Time management and study skills. It can be helpful to think of studying and schoolwork the way some health experts talk about exercise. Shorter but more intense workouts, say 30 to 45 minutes, every day is more beneficial to your general health in the long run than long workouts 2 or 3 times a week. Additionally, what you're doing outside of the gym, diet, sleep, self-care, all of that affect how effective your workouts are. Studying is similar. Although sometimes we feel like we should be sitting down for many consecutive hours poring over books, in the long run, that's just a good way to burn yourself out. Let's take a look about 2 closely related things: time management and some study hacks. Used together, these skills and tools will allow you to use your time wisely and get the most out of the time you do spend on schoolwork. Just before the semester starts, it helps to make a schedule. The first thing to put on your weekly plan are your non-negotiables, when your classes meet, as well as your professor's office hours, in case you ever want to go, any shifts at work, family obligations you may have, and things like that. These are all the things that you need to work around. Next, you have to determine how to use the rest of your time. You need to prioritize downtime and fun time as much as you prioritize studying. Turns out that the old adage, work hard, play hard, is pretty true. For a lot of people, downtime is usually designated to nights and weekends, but this might not be the case for you. It could be any time when you just know you won't be in the headspace to study. Pencil these times in next. It might seem odd to pencil in downtime before some of your other obligations, but if you don't take the time to relax, you won't be studying as effectively as possible when you do crack open the books. Other things to consider putting in your schedule early in the process are things like exercise, meal prep if you do that, and household chores. These aren't necessarily non-negotiable in the way classes and jobs are, because you can do them at any time, but they are a necessary part of life, and having them in order will help your mind be clear when you sit down to study. Do you want to sprinkle them in throughout the week, or dedicate one whole afternoon to chores? Both can work. It depends on who you are and how you like to operate. In that vein, in order to make an effective weekly schedule, it helps to know yourself really well. You need to be brutally realistic with yourself. Are you a morning person or a night owl? Can you sit for long periods of time, or do you work in fits and spurts? If you're a morning person, for example, you may want to work on your most challenging class, or the class you like the least, in the morning when you're feeling your best and most alert, and then work on the things that come easier to you later in the day. If you, like many CUNY students, are juggling school and a job, think about your classes and your shifts. Schedule time to work on your more challenging or demanding classes when you have longer blocks of time and your less taxing assignments in shorter blocks. It can also be helpful to block out a couple of hours, if you can, at the end of each week, or on a weekend, if that works for you, to catch up on things you may have missed. Life is crazy, things come up. When your classes start, take a close look at your syllabi. When are your exams? When will you have papers and other big assignments due? Mark those dates ASAP and begin preparing for those things as early as possible. Next, think about where you want to work or like to work. Not everyone does their best in a quiet, serious library. Do you like music while you study? White noise? People talking? Sometimes switching up your scenery helps. Maybe you want to try working in one location in the morning and someplace else in the afternoon. Lastly, zoom out and look at your monthly and semester-long calendar. Mark any days the school is closed, as well as any other important one-time events. Just because you're doing the assigned reading, writing, or problem sets for a course doesn't mean you're learning, or learning as thoroughly as you could be. In order to get the most out of studying, you need to be fully in the moment, which is easier said than done. So, how do we do it? How can we keep ourselves fully in the moment and get the most out of the work we are putting in? According to experts, the answer is metacognition, or literally thinking about thinking while you're thinking. There are lots of ways to put this into action. Let's take a look at some strategies. Before your semester gets fully underway, take a look at your syllabus. What topics will be discussed over the course of the semester? What order will they be in? Professors don't just put things on random days for no reason. A lot of thought goes into the order of topics covered in a semester. Try to take some time and consider these things early on. If it's an upper level course, try to summon knowledge from the prerequisite level classes. Next, when you're doing your class reading, read out loud. I know it might sound silly at first, especially because we usually associate reading out loud with children, but it really helps. Of course, you can't do this at a library, but when you're studying at home, it could be a good time to give it a try. Reading out loud involves more of your body and requires more effort, forcing you to hone in on what you're reading and saying. I find reading out loud particularly helpful when I'm reading a challenging academic essays, one of those things where you're like, what is this person saying? Sometimes a sentence that's hard to make sense of when read silently in your mind comes to life when it's read out loud. Additionally, if you are taking a foreign language class, reading out loud really helps in those situations. Not only are you putting metacognition to work, but you're also practicing your pronunciation. Another effective metacognitive strategy is to ask yourself a lot of questions. This can be done in writing, out loud, or just in your head. A combination of these works too. Some of these questions will be about the content of your work. What does this mean? Why does this author make this claim? Things like that. Ask yourself how it's related to the work you've done in the previous weeks for that class. Are there connections to be made? Is knowledge you have from other classes or even just other life experiences coming to mind? Make note of that. And if you're struggling with something, ask yourself about that. What specifically do you not understand? Is there something that would make it easier? And if so, what is that something? On the flip side, if you feel like you're absolutely acing something, ask yourself why too. What is contributing to your success and how can you translate it into other assignments? Lastly, if you're zoning out, take a step back and check in with yourself. Are you hungry? Do you need a cup of coffee? Do you need to just move your body around a little? Listen to your body and give it what it needs. Another metacognition strategy, which is probably familiar to you, is taking notes. Well, in a lecture, keeping notes helps us stay alert. Same with reading, but it's not enough to just write down word for word what you're hearing or reading. Let's take a look at two different note-taking strategies. The SQ4R strategy, or survey, question, read, record, recite, review, is really good for reading textbooks, as they tend to all be organized in more or less the same way. They often have a survey at the front of the chapter, or bullet points that go over what the chapter is going to talk about. The different sections of each chapter are clearly titled, which makes it easy to follow. The first part of SQ4R is to survey the chapter. Read the bullet points or the brief overview at the beginning, take a quick look at the section titles, and try to get a sense of what the chapter is going to be about. Next, write any questions that come to mind based on your survey. Then, start reading, taking things one paragraph at a time and recording and reciting the most important pieces of information you learn. Once you do that for the whole chapter, review everything you've recorded. This method can be time-consuming, but it's very thorough and a good strategy for reading dense readings. This triple entry method has fewer steps. You start by writing down a direct quote from the reading in the first column. Don't write every sentence, obviously, just the sentences that stand out and make the most important points. Then, in the middle column, you translate, so to speak, what you've written into your own words. This helps you parse out the meaning. Then, in the third column, you can jot down any ideas that come to mind about it or make connections to other things. This method is particularly useful when reading before writing a paper, because now all of your direct quotes that you might want to use are in one place. For more information and further guidance, click the link below.